3, 2, 1.
Hey everybody, it's Eric Pappenfuss. It's Friday, so it must be a buy day. And today we are going to talk about the great inventor, Thomas Alva Edison. Why? Well, because we found an amazing item of his in a big box of old paper. And I've been in contact with the Edison papers that are based in New Jersey, and I wanted to share with you our latest findings. But also, do you remember a few weeks back, Olivia, I went book shopping in New York State and I bought some old Scientific Americans? Well, I've had a chance to go through those, and we have some pretty incredible articles either written about or by Thomas Edison that I also wanted to show you. So let's get right to it. Are you familiar with the work of the famous Thomas Alva Edison? I bet you are. There he is in all his glory. That's an etching of Edison that came in later in life, but pretty cool one. This artist here who did this was known as the Postcard King, because he did designs for thousands of postcards in the postcard era, and the great postcard era for American history. We've got postcards here in the collectibles building was the early part of the 20th century. Did you know that Edison was completely deaf in one ear and could barely hear out of the other ear? This was due to a childhood illness, but supposedly it helped him concentrate. But it's very ironic for somebody who's most famous for dealing with sound. There are many stories of how he would hold plates in his mouth so he could feel the vibrations of sound. He started with Morse's telegraph. That's what really got him interested in science, and eventually made improvements to everything from the telephone to you name it. But this coming from an individual who could barely hear. All right. Edison, you should know, when he was very young, got his start selling magazines and newspapers on trains. He grew up in 19th century America, where train transportation was all the rage. He even founded his own newspaper as a teenager, and this got him immersed in print culture. And he was also an avid reader, but he always appreciated the importance of magazines. And when he finally had his first great invention, as I say, he started with basically dealing with Morse code and the telegraph lines. But when he got an idea for his first great invention, he took it to the leading scientific magazine of the age, and that was Scientific American. And these were the magazines that I got out of the big old chicken barn in New York State. You can refer to that by day. And I want to start with Edison's first great invention, which happened in 1877. Now, 1877 was a big year for Scientific American, because it was the year that Alexander Graham Bell, basically, who was a Canadian inventor, and by the way, Edison's family was from Canada, so we owe a lot to the Canadians, but this is Alexander Graham Bell unveiling his telephone. But in the same basic year of Scientific American, in which they're constantly covering the telephone, Edison walks into the Scientific American office. He doesn't say anything, Olivia. He puts down his invention on a table, and he sits back. And do you know what happens? I'm going to tell you what happens. What happens is he amazes everyone, and they think that Edison has engaged in deep, dark magic. If you look here, you can see that we're talking about the talking phonograph. And Mr. Thomas Alva Edison recently came into this office, placed a little machine on our desk, turned a crank, and the machine inquired as to our health, asked how we liked the phonograph, informed us that it was very well, and bid us a cordial good night. Isn't that a great way to tell in a machine? This was so marvelous, this invention of the phonograph, that people were stunned. They thought he was a magician, a wizard. And they started calling him the Wizard of Menlo Park. And this is the first example of record player, the origin of audiobooks and all sorts of things was Edison's phonograph. And since he was a showman, he released it in Scientific American. He told everybody about it. And Scientific American sort of took the lead in trying to explain it to people. This is the second year, or just the March after the initial demonstration. And there's the phonograph. You know what I like about this article here? Edison is so proud of his invention that he even boasts, this is true, he says that he can in time make the machine talk so loudly that it can be used on vessels to warn off other ships during fog. And his last astonishing proposal is that he shall construct a huge phonograph to go in the great bronze Statue of Liberty, which is to be erected in New York Harbor so that the metal giant can make a speech audible to the entire bay. Can you imagine if the Statue of Liberty could speak? We should have let Edison do that. But there is the phonograph, and that is, this is the sort of journal of the day describing Edison and his first great invention. Now, this would be enough, don't you think, Olivia? This would be enough to make your mark as an inventor if you invented the first talking machine. Incidentally, he records Rutherford B. Hayes, who's president at the time. And to this day, we still can't play back that recording because it was made on such fragile tinfoil that if you were to play it back, it would destroy the recording. So we're still waiting for advances in modern computer technology to be able to read those plates without damaging them. And then we might hear the voice of President Hayes as well as the voice of Edison himself. But tinfoil was the key to the original phonograph. But do you think Edison was done inventing, Olivia? No, he was not done. He was not done because this is 1878. Do you know what he invented in 1879? Or do you know what he basically took to market? Well, that is the incandescent light. And so here we have Edison's electric light in Scientific American with all of its greatness. Edison didn't invent the light bulb, but what he did was he was able to master. He quickly turned from recording sound to producing light because he knew that there was money to be made here as well. He wanted to electrify all of New York City, and he used carbon in his light, and he was able to make his light bulbs last for up to 100 hours, which was more than anyone else was able to do at the time. And there you have the electric light, which is pretty cool. And then one more Scientific American, which comes right on the heels of this. Do you know what happens after you invent electric lights? Well, now you have to invent an electric power grid that's going to propel those lights and sort of make them able to be seen. And here is one of Edison's earliest articles in Scientific American, written by himself. Can you see that? It is on the pyromagnetic dynamo. Do you know what a dynamo is? Well, it tells you. It's basically an electric generator. So here is Edison writing about his generator, and he so believed in the power of magazines, both to get his inventions out there, but also to bring him fame, allow him to patent his discoveries, and he used Scientific American pretty regularly. Here's another Edison article. This time, Edison is writing about a magnetic bridge, which is a device used to measure magnetic current, which is pretty cool. So these Scientific Americans are amazing. They also have great ads, great other information, but that was Edison. So I was inspired by Edison already when I picked these up, but then I produced a box of old paper, Olivia. And in that box of old paper, I found an actual signed letter by Thomas Alva Edison. And I know it's hard to believe, but I promise you this was in there. Now, this was an auction lot. It was filled with miscellaneous autographs, but it was usually like B-string major leaguers from the 1970s and, unknown authors from the 1950s. But then there was this letter. Now, I sent a copy of it to Paul Israel at the Edison Papers Project. He's the leading scholar on Edison and on Edison's papers. And he said they had never seen this letter before. He wrote to me who his friend Symington was. James Symington was a friend of Edison's father. And he lived in Michigan, where Edison's father, who had basically passed away at the time of this letter, was living. And this is a really interesting letter because it's basically talking about someone who is trying to swindle people, the Howe attempted swindle out of their land, or probably trying to sell land for too high a price. And Edison basically says here, I will convince him that my respect for the memory of my late father will lead to processes that will secure to him a steady conviction that honesty is the best policy. And what a great, I mean, he's quoting Ben Franklin there, and we just had our Ben Franklin by day, but what Edison is basically saying is we're going to take him to court and we're going to sue him. Isn't that an interesting letter? And this T for Thomas is how Edison would do his T's, with this sort of long, drawn-out T. Now, this letter is unusual. We think perhaps it was drafted by Symington for Edison to sign. It might have been to be used in a court case. Edison, by this time, this is 1896, is so famous. I mean, he's invented the light and the phonograph and everything else, and thousands of inventions that basically, you know, his word, honesty is the best policy, was going to make a difference in this court case that he writes to his friend Symington. Don't know how much this letter is worth. Couldn't tell you, but we're going to put it up on eBay this week so you can watch the results if you look for Edison signed letter, and we'll see the interest. But historically, it's really, really cool. Okay. Well, that's Thomas Alva Edison from the point of view of the Midtown Scholar. Should we end with a funny book? Okay. I wanted something to do with the history of invention and history of creation. And there are lots of different industries that have written books, you know, sort of not the history of the electric light or the history of the phonograph, but something else. And this one struck me as being quite funny. I really like it just because of the title. It's Highlights in the History of Concrete. What a great title for a book, right? And it's made by the Cement and Concrete Association. What I also like about the book is that the calculations for how much water to put in your concrete were sort of off in the highlights for the history. So they had to issue an errata slip, which we also have with the highlights of concrete, which tells you how to convert to the proper number of Canadian gallons. Do you know there's a difference between Canadian gallons and American gallons? Well, you'll learn that in the highlights of the history of concrete. Such a good title. This is going in the case on the American history floor with all of our most quality books, including The Dirt Hole and its uses. Highlights in the History of Concrete, our funny book for the week. Well, that'll do it for another Buy Day. Thanks for watching. I hope you'll watch next Friday and every Friday at noon for more adventures in the world of books.